Good afternoon. Nice to see you all. Thank you for joining us for lunch. This is the Wednesday Lunch and Learn with Women in the Law UK. I'm Sally Penni. I'm the founder of Women in the Law UK. I've got some new people on here today. Nice to see you, Amalia. And we've got a fantastic guest who is Nick Gallagher, the Chief Executive of the SBA. Now, some of you may or may not have heard about the SBA. It's all good. Nick's going to tell you all about the SBA. I know all about the SBA, even though I'm a barrister, because we've got an equivalent bar benevolent fund. But I think the SBA sounds actually slightly better from what I say. I read. So brilliant. Thank you all for joining us. I think there were quite a lot of people booked on today, but not sure about the technical issues. You all know it's above my payroll. We'll have to ask Amalia. So I'm going to hand over to Nick. Nick, I don't know if you're doing a formal presentation, are you? Or are you just going to talk?
I'm going to talk. I'll share my screen as a few points, so let's hope the technology works for that.
Okay. I've made you host.
Marvellous. That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Hopefully that's all going to work perfectly.
Yes.
Thanks, Sally. As Sally says, Nick Gallagher, CEO of SBA, the Solicitors Charity. I'm grateful and very conscious that I should be grateful that I've been incredibly busy for the last 4 months, busy with work. We have been very busy at the SBA, the Solicitors Charity, but I recognise that so many solicitors have not been able to be busy because they've been affected by COVID-19. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about what SBA, the Solicitors Charity, normally does, and a little bit about who we help, but also about what we've been doing during the COVID pandemic, and also just where our thinking's taking us to. And I'm delighted to see that we've been joined by Elizabeth Rimmer, who's my opposite number at Lawcare, who's a partner organisation of SBA, the Solicitor Charity. And Elizabeth and I talk a lot and are working together on how we can work better together. But first of all, a little bit about SBA, the Solicitors Charity. We were founded 160 years ago as the Solicitors Benevolent Association. Our vision is that all solicitors are supported in times of need or crisis. And in normal times, that has been support to people who, because of health or disability, or perhaps because of unemployment, are not fit for work, aren't able to work. And the kind of support that we typically give is financial help a lot of the time. And that might be around daily living expenses. It might be for equipment. It might be for adaptations for people who are disabled and need adaptations at home. We also fund access to benefits and debt advice provided by colleagues at Citizens Advice in Manchester. We're delighted that we provide funds to Lawcare so that they can provide emotional support to solicitors and indeed other legal professionals. We also work closely with the Solicitors Assistance Scheme, and they provide professional, regulatory and legal support, particularly around employment law. And for those people who are unemployed and would like to return to work, we also fund career transition counselling through a partner organisation. I can't speak today. A partner organisation called Renova. And I'm just going to try and share my screen for the first time, just to show you some demographics. Amalia, I can see you live. Can you see that? Can you give me a thumbs up? That's perfect. Thank you, Amalia. So I just thought you might be interested to see a little bit more, in a little bit more detail, what we do. So these are the stats for 2019, and you'll see we dispersed just over £1 million to solicitors in need and their families. You may be interested to see that 70% of the people we help are age 60 or under. So some people have a view that we are a charity that supports the widows and widowers of solicitors. That's very much not the case. Very often the people we are supporting are of working age. Interestingly, perhaps not surprisingly, over half the people we help are women. I say not surprisingly because our experience, and I think this may be the case, Elizabeth may have seen this with law care, is that women solicitors are more likely to ask for help than male solicitors. I don't think that's just solicitors either. I think that's a common feature. You will see here that a third of the people that come to us have say they have poor mental health, and 2/3 have some sort of health issue. A lot of the people that come to us have dependent children at home. You'll see here that we provide help to beneficiaries who need help with career transition counselling and also with debt advice. And now if I can just find a way to move my screen down, it doesn't seem to want to do that. Yes, here we go. Some more areas of information. You'll see that a lot of the help we provide is to solicitors who are sole practitioners or in small firms. And interestingly, when I come on to talk about COVID in a moment, that has been replicated, as perhaps you might expect, in the help that we provided there. But again, look at these figures, that 37% of the people we help have been in practice for less than 10 years, and 2/3 for less than 20 years. So again, this reinforces the fact that we're helping people throughout their careers, but right from the very start of their professional life. So that gives you a sense of the people that we have been helping. As I said at the beginning, the people we traditionally helped are those who were unable to work or who'd become unemployed. COVID-19 presented us with a different challenge, a different type of need or crisis for solicitors. And that, of course, was that there were many people who would be desperate to be working, were perfectly fit to work, but were prevented from doing so by COVID-19. And so we realized we needed to do something different. We wanted to make sure that we were focusing our help on those most in need. For us, we saw that that was probably people who were falling through the gaps of government provision. And we have quite a big rule in the charity that we don't displace statutory funding. We don't displace money that the government would provide. So therefore, we needed a scheme that would fit around that. We wanted to make sure that we had enough money to fund the scheme, and this is an ongoing process. We've only just started over the last few months. We expect things will carry on for many more months. Let's just see what happens in the autumn when the furlough scheme starts to end, and if more people are coming to us at that point. But what we did was to identify a £1 million fund from our free reserves, which are there for rainy days and crisis, and this felt like a very big rainy day. And we set up a hardship fund. And I'm going to share my screen again. And Amalia, if you could do the usual thumbs up, that would be great. Thank you, Amalia. Lovely. And what we did was we established a COVID-19 support hub on our website. And you don't want to look at him, so we'll come down here. We set up some information, the hub with information, but also access to the hardship fund. We were looking at support for individuals, and some of this is very practical stuff, and perhaps not as relevant as it was a few months ago because people have picked up on this, but even now people might still only just be coming to us for help. But help about getting job seekers allowance and universal credit, making sure that you're getting hold of the benefits you're entitled to. Things like the National Careers Service, or Turn to Us, which is a charity that helps people in financial hardship gain access to other sources of funds. The Money Advice Service, if people are going through straitened times, perhaps that was useful for managing money, but also just contacting us. If you're either a new applicant or an existing beneficiary, we were still open and ready to help. We also linked to some of the information that was provided for those who were self-employed. Though we usually focus on the individual and personal hardship, we did think it was useful to bring together some information about businesses. And so here we list out the various schemes that businesses might want to make use of, including business interruption loan scheme and job retention scheme. We also put up some resources, particularly about well-being, and you'll see that is links to government sites and NHS sites. Perhaps you have staff and colleagues and you're worried about their mental health, so there's advice there, but also links to our partners. And I'm sure Elizabeth will be delighted to see that Law Care is first in the list there, but also this list as assistance scheme and the Law Society practice scheme. But perhaps most importantly is our personal hardship fund. And so on the website, there is information about who can apply to us. And as I say, we were trying to plug gaps that we thought that people would be falling down. So we thought there might be people who are self-isolating and only receiving SSP from their employer. Actually, nobody's applied to us in that situation. We've had lots of people who applied to us because their employment status has changed and they weren't supported through the furlough scheme. And that goes all the way back to newly qualified solicitors who have ended their training contract, were about to start their first post-qualification job, and that's fallen by the wayside. And so they're in a gap. They don't get any support. Lots of help to self-employed people. And we did that in two ways. That was either those who could get no income from any of the government schemes, we'd provide a grant to them, but also those who were waiting for the self-employed assistance scheme to kick in, the income support scheme to kick in, one-off payments to those people to keep them going. We realised also that some people who would get on that scheme were getting very small payments, so we will also top those up again. So you can see that's some of the ways that we're providing financial support. There is the information about how to apply. This is very specifically focused at those people who are most in need. So we do expect people to have made attempts to get government support, to join the government schemes where they can, to look at the benefit provision, and also that they haven't got large amounts of savings that they could fall back on for their rainy day. Very simple application form here as well. It looks as though there are lots of pages here. Actually, not everybody has to fill them all out. It's just the way the technology works, but a very straightforward application form. So that's what we have been doing. We're now turning our thoughts to what's going to happen next. I already said that we expect there to be another wave of applications in the autumn when the furlough scheme comes to an end. But we're also now beginning to think about what the differences might be going forward. We've in discussions with Law Care about what we might do more around mental health. Law Care provides emotional well-being support, but also we need to think about those people who might need counselling and can't access that immediately through the NHS. We don't want to get in the way of the NHS. But what can we do to provide more support if there's going to be a wave of people coming through, and all the signs are, the research is beginning to show that instances of mental health issues are rising on the back of COVID-19. What might we do around that? But also we're going to be doing some work in the next couple of weeks, including a survey you might see on social media, and perhaps, Sally, we might be able to put that out through your organisation as well, just asking people what their status is, what would help them get back to work? What do they need now? What would be the kind of support that would be helpful for them personally to transition through the extension of the COVID pandemic and the implications of it, the impact of that. So anyway, that's probably all very dry for you. There's lots of facts and figures and words on screens. If you'd let me, I just want to tell you a story to round off what I'm going to say. And it's a story of somebody who approached us several years ago. And I think it illustrates the kind of support that we can provide to people. And this was before COVID-19. This is the kind of support that was our bread and butter for many years. And it's a story about a real person. I've changed her name. Let's call her Jenny. And Jenny is a young solicitor in her early 30s, living with a partner. And she was made redundant. And that was a bit of a blow to her. It came unexpectedly. It became more of a worry when she also found out at about the same time that she was pregnant. Now, that should have been a cause for joy. But unfortunately, Jenny, I said she was living with her partner. She was actually in an abusive relationship. And her partner said to her, in terms, I'm going to make sure you lose the baby. So Jenny got out immediately, as you might understand. And the only place she could go to was to family, didn't have space for her, so she was couch surfing. And so she contacted us around Christmas in real need, in a real crisis. And the first thing we did to help was to help her find a woman's refuge. So she had somewhere safe to stay, her own bed, her own room. And then we supported her while she looked for a deposit on a new flat. While she looked for a new flat. And then when she found a new flat, we provided the deposit for that flat. And we talked to her about what she would do next. And Jenny agreed that she'd be very interested in Renovo. This is the career transitioning support that I talked about. And we agreed that that was appropriate for after she'd given birth. And so we kept in touch. Jenny gave birth to a lovely little girl, and we thought everything was going to be fine. She could start Renovo. But then she was diagnosed with PTSD, and she couldn't get any help on the NHS immediately. The waiting list was 6 months to get any counselling. So we funded a short course of counselling for her, and that helped greatly. Her mental health improved, and she decided that actually what she really wanted to do was to retrain as a teacher, and she was successful in that. And so we'd help support her through to that point. And then just towards the end of that retraining, a very simple problem cropped up. When Jenny had left home, when she'd left the abusive boyfriend, she'd left all her clothes behind. And so something that was very simple that we could do at that point was to give her a grant to buy some new clothes so she could go into the classroom feeling greater about her appearance, full of confidence. And we had a great message back from Jenny just after she'd started that. And it ended with, I feel that I and the baby now have a fighting chance. So that was great for us because we heard that we made a difference in her life, but it perhaps illustrates that the people we support, it could be a young female solicitor like Jenny in her early 30s. It could be support to get out of a dangerous situation. It could be financial support. It could be funding access to career transition counselling. It could be something as simple as a grant for clothes. But that's a really good example of the kind of work that we do. And I hope it illustrates that we really are trying to be there for solicitors in need or crisis so that every solicitor is supported in times of need or crisis. Anyway, that's enough from me. I'd be delighted to take some questions.
Fantastic. Well, let's firstly give a clap for Nick. That was really interesting, Nick. I'm going to kick off, as usual, this is our format, with 2 questions. Firstly, I thought that was really interesting, Nick. And actually, here at Women in the Law, those who are regulars will know, our advisor is, if you've got, problems and issues and it's counselling, the first thing we say is you contact Law Care. So if you receive our newsletters, people know there's a 3-step approach, but now we've got a 4th. The first is contact Law Care. If Law Care can't help because you're not a solicitor or whatever else, then you need to go to contact us for our pro bono counsellors who are both ex-solicitors, Kate and Susan. That's confidential and is private, and they are experienced, especially Susan, in bereavement and other counselling therapies. Then the third place that we say is if it's financial health check you need, because finances lead to worry and well-being also. I truly believe that. well, there's evidence, then you contact Wesleyan, who are our partners, for your financial health check, because it's really important, even now in COVID. And so now we've got a fourth, the SBA. Who knew? I mean, that story is really powerful, what you were just saying, Nick, there, actually, and very common. But then people not knowing that they can seek assistance from you. Yeah. So the scenario is common. So I'm really encouraged by that. Can we go back to sort of the first question I've got, which is just this, really. Looking at the statistical evidence that you showed us, or data rather, I noticed that ethnic minorities was only 5% of the people that
No, 17%. You let me just bring the
Yeah, the question is, that's quite low. Is it that you're not getting the applications, or you know, is there a discriminatory factor? I doubt there is. Why is the figure so low?
Well, I think it's interesting. If you add up non-white and white British, it's actually 17%.
Yeah, so I was looking at the individuals within the 17. Yeah.
So we have an overrepresentation of African, Caribbean and Black British compared with the stats in the population. We actually don't, if I'm being honest, we don't know for sure why these stats are as they are. Funnily enough, I've got a meeting just this afternoon about this very issue. One of the things that we are picking up, and I picked up from talking to the BAME division at the Law Society, is that there may be an issue with support to BAME solicitors who are sole practitioners or working in small firms. That area is quite difficult for us to get our message out to anyway. By their very nature, sole practitioners are working by themselves. They aren't necessarily surrounded by colleagues. They may or may not be associated with the local law society. They may or may not be members of the sole practitioners group, for instance. So as part of our general attempts at the moment to broaden and improve our communications, one of the features is both sole practitioners and small firms, but also BAME solicitors as well, to get the message out. And I think Caroline was asking about how she could help help us. The message to anybody in the call today is, talk about us to your friends and colleagues, get the message out. We would love to be able to send an individual email to every solicitor in the country, but we don't have the email addresses of every solicitor in the country. That information is held by the SRA, held very tightly. We don't have access to that. So we are reliant on networks to get the word out. Individuals telling individuals about this is really important. But at the same time, as I say, we also want to go through other networks like Women in Law, like some of the groupings like sole practitioners, talking to some of the BAME networks as well about our work.
Yes.
So in answer to your question, coming back to it, we don't really know why the stats add up as they do. What we want to do is to have more people and a better spread of people.
Yeah, well, that's a very good answer, and I'm encouraged that, you're keen to do it. But I've got to ask you, because, we are in Black Lives Matter, and that campaign has got to apply to all aspects, not just of our society, but of our profession. So we know statistically that the SRA disproportionately reprimands women-owned organisations and ethnic minority-owned. Therefore, one would have thought that they sought assistance from SBA, and the evidence just doesn't correlate. So that's why I'm asking, and I'm encouraged. And I can connect you with Black Solicitors Network and some of the minority to get your message out there that, you support all and them, and that the figure will remain so low, because it is a query.
It's interesting as well, Sally. I had a conversation with COSA at the BAME division of the Law Society, and she's told what seemed to me a very disturbing but interesting narrative arc of solicitors from BAME backgrounds perhaps being the first person in their family to go to university, huge amount of pressure to get a job. Therefore, the pressure leads them to take a job which isn't really great within a firm. They're not particularly well treated in the firm. That drives them to think that the best thing will be set up in business by themselves. This leads them to be sole practitioners or perhaps in a two-handed firm. They're desperate to succeed, desperate to make money, desperate to be funding, supporting family. This may mean that there are some corners cut on some of the regulation, and this may lead to some of the problems with the SRA. And it's all, it's this horrible narrative arc. And that really chimed with me. And it's one of the reasons why we're so interested in trying to improve getting the message to all sections of the profession, but particularly to BAME solicitors, because we are there to help any solicitor. But we can only do that if they know that we exist.
Absolutely, and you're spot on. It's not just that they cut corners, it's that they don't have the resources or the knowledge to, for example, deal with compliance. But the SRA has admitted that the majority of those who did discipline, there's been an inquiry into all of this. So, it's old news, if you like. But I see it as a failure when minorities leave the big law firms and set up on their own. I don't care that people say, oh, they want more freedom, oh, we want flexibility. No, because we know their incomes disproportionately drop. We know, for example, the women-owned firms, they struggle to get funding. They can't get the best trainees, and it's a spiral. You're spot on. So I'm really encouraged by that.
One of the practical, if I could just also add something, Sally, one of the practical things we're doing in this area, just to make sure, try to make sure that we are guarding ourselves against unconscious bias. We're just introducing a new CRM system, and the way that we're designing the system, the case note on which a decision is made about awards will be stripped of most demographic information. So it's purely the case. It's not names. It's not gender, it's not ethnicity or anything that's available to people making decisions. It's just the facts of the case, to try to make that as free from bias as we possibly can. That's
great. I'm really encouraged by that, Nick. So the other thing I want to, I'm so pleased that you support law care, because I know Elizabeth is here. She knows I've said this, so I'm not saying it because she's on here. If they were crap, I'd say they were crap. You know that, Elizabeth. Is that the brilliant work that law care have been doing to actually come to more of our forefronts, but still not everybody knows about law care and the support that they offer the legal profession, that being solicitors and barristers, and actually judges phone law care. We had a fantastic talk by Mary Jackson, who was brilliant. So my question is about a slightly different angle on the well-being side, which can lead to people needing your hub, needing the hardship fund, needing what we're going through at the moment. And it's the LGBT community. So one of the things that's happened is that there's a perception that LGBTQ rights, we're a women's organisation and we've got lots of LGBTQ members, are there and they're okay and everyone is okay and everyone's wearing rainbow lanyards and it's all fine. Well, it's not, because lots of LGBTQ students, for example, come out of university, but the moment they enter the workplace and in law firms, they go back in the closet because they can't be their full selves. And actually what tends to happen is, slightly better than minorities, is that they will leave, but nobody ever investigates why they leave. Or they then get into mental health problems. So one of the things that's been happening for some of our members is that, there has been no Pride, has there, this year? And that's been one of the ways that some of our members would express themselves. And so the mental health is particularly on the increase as well for that section of the community. So I just wondered if that was something that you were tracking as well, in terms of solicitors needing assistance from the SBA.
It's not something we've tracked explicitly, Sally, but again, we are, we're trying to live up to this vision that all solicitors are supported in times of need or crisis. Yeah. So again, it's another grouping, it's another demographic within the profession to whom we would want to get our message out. And it's irrelevant to us, the background of the people who come to ask us for help.
Yeah.
We will provide help. But for us, there is the challenge is making sure that we're getting known to solicitors. And so we've got to use all channels. And that might be LGBTQ groups, or it may just be talking to a local law society, because they will have gay members. So the important thing is we're getting our message out broadly, and that people feel that when they come to us, they will be treated fairly without any sort of bias, and that everybody is eligible for support. If they're eligible for support, we will provide it.
Fantastic.